Can Jesus' eternal nature be disproven? ChatGPT said, "The question of whether Jesus' eternal nature can be disproven is deeply theological and intersects with historical, philosophical, and scriptural analysis." Here's an overview of why this question remains profoundly challenging to answer definitively against his eternal nature. 1. Scriptural evidence for Jesus' eternal nature. John chapter 1, 1-3. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. This verse establishes Jesus, the Word, as existing before all creation, affirming his eternal nature. Micah chapter 5, 2. The prophecy states the Messiah's origins are from of old, from ancient times, pointing to his existence before time. Revelation 22:13. Jesus says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end," which are titles that assert eternal existence. Skeptics would need to provide an alternative interpretation or evidence contradicting these texts, which have been foundational for Christian belief for millennia. 2. Historical claims about Jesus. The early church universally affirmed Jesus' divinity and eternal nature, as reflected in the Nicene Creed. Begotten, not made, being of one substance with the Father. Ancient heresies like Arianism tried to argue that Jesus was created, but these were refuted through theological and biblical arguments. Any claim against Jesus' eternal nature must contend with centuries of theological reasoning and the historical affirmation of his divinity. 3. Philosophical considerations, eternity and time. If Jesus is one with God, and God exists outside of time, Psalm 90:2, "From everlasting to everlasting, you are God," then Jesus must also exist outside of time. Creation and Creator. If Jesus is involved in creation, John chapter 1:3, Colossians chapter 1:16-17, then he cannot himself be created. A created being cannot create all things, including time itself. Philosophically, disproving Jesus' eternal nature would require demonstrating that he is not integral to the nature of God, a nearly insurmountable challenge given the coherence of these concepts in Christian theology. 4. The challenge for skeptics. To disprove Jesus' eternal nature, skeptics must address the consistency of biblical claims that portray Jesus as eternal, historical documentation and beliefs that affirm his divinity, the philosophical necessity of an eternal being for the creation and sustenance of the universe. Skeptics might argue that the Bible is not divinely inspired or that interpretations of key passages are flawed, but these positions rely on assumptions that cannot conclusively be proven. 5. Faith and evidence. Ultimately, belief in Jesus' eternal nature is a matter of faith, informed by scripture, tradition, and reason. Disproving this claim would require evidence that undermines the coherence of the entire Christian worldview, a feat that has not been accomplished in over 2,000 years. Conclusion. Jesus' eternal nature cannot be easily disproven due to the weight of scriptural, historical, and philosophical evidence affirming it. The discussion often hinges on the presuppositions one brings to the table, whether one views the Bible as authoritative, God as existent, or eternity as a concept tied to divinity. If skeptics believe they can disprove it, the burden of proof lies with them to provide compelling counter-evidence that accounts for the profound coherence of the Christian narrative.